Welcome to this eSafety support video. Today we're going to take a look at the eSafety policy wizard. When we were researching the product, we spoke to a number of teachers, school management and other members of staff who had a responsibility for eSafety. And in addition to the teaching resources, the single biggest concern was about the large and complicated scale of the task involved in producing an eSafety policy for the school. Many weren't happy with the off-the-shelf documents they'd been using, and others were concerned that these policies would be not regarded highly during inspection. So in order to help, we've produced a tool which we call our eSafety Policy Wizard, and that's available as part of the Premium Plus package, and I'm going to show that to you now. Okay, so what we can see here is the dashboard for a Premium Plus member. As we can see, we have all the resources available here for download. This is the section that we're interested in for this video. This is where our eSafety Policy Wizard lives. For a member that hasn't used the wizard before, we find two options here. The policy distribution list will be the subject of a separate video. Today we're going to look at creating and editing a bespoke policy for your school using the policy wizard. So we can do this, we can get started by clicking the Create eSafety Policy, and this will drop us straight into the wizard. Now the wizard is a simple tool which allows you to skip through a number of options and decide whether or not you wish to include that content within your policy. Some of the sections have the option for you to select from a list of sub-options. Some of the pages allow you to enter bespoke content, and other pages allow you to add extra bits and pieces to a list. So let's take a look at the policy builder. Okay, so this is just the introductory page. To get started, we click the next button, and we can see a bit of instructional information there. So the first thing we're going to do is enter the school name and the date, and we want to include that information. And then we're into section 1 of the Policy Builder Wizard, which is basically about setting the scene and explaining what the policy is all about. So we click Next, and that tells us a little bit more, and we click Next. Now we're into the content section of the wizard now, and as you'll see, there are 3 buttons along the bottom of the screen. These are common throughout the wizard while we're creating. Basically, Include will include the content of the currently visible page into your document. Skip will move on to the next page without including this content, and Previous will move you back to the previous page so that you can make a different decision or review your decision. So I want to include this and this and this, and we've completed the first section. So we'll hit Next now, we'll move on to section 2. And section 2 is all about the scope of the policy. And similarly, we have a number of pages of content here which we can either choose to include or skip if we don't want to include it in our document. We've completed section 2, so we'll click Next again to move on to section 3. So section 3 is still about setting the scene, some of the scoping, and it outlines more specifically for your school what the policy is going to cover. And you can choose which options to include here simply by checking the appropriate boxes. Once you've decided what you want to include, you can then hit the Include button to add that to your policy. We're on section 4 now, which is where the policy document starts to get a little bit more detailed. click next to enter that. I'm going to include that. Now here we have a screen. There are a number of these throughout the wizard which allow you to enter some specific information about your school, so such as the eSafety coordinator, which in the case of my school is Bob. So I shall enter his name here, and we can likewise enter all the relevant details on this screen, including the list of governors, PTA, if that is relevant. Again, if we don't want to include some of these, we just uncheck them and those bits won't be included within our finished document. So I'm going to include those sections and move on to the next screen. This is a screen that asks how often we want to review the document, so this is part of the policy itself. I'm going to say that for our school we're going to review just every term. And the rest of this section is very much like this. In fact, the rest of the wizard is very much like this. We have a selection of pages which are about content we want to include. We have some screens that let us be a bit more specific about those. We can even add our own extra pieces of content into these screens. And there are other screens which are purely there for guidance. So I'm just going to race through the rest of this wizard now, ignoring all the fields here that need to be filled in, just to get through. Now, as you can see, as we click through this, the finished policy is going to include a large amount of information, which pretty much should cover everything that that you would want in an eSafety policy for your school. And as you can see, it is a fairly simple question of clicking through, deciding what you want to include, what you don't want to include, and filling in any bespoke data as you go. I'm just whipping through this without reading it all, without entering any data, just to show you the scope of the wizard itself and the finished document. So I'll click through here, a bit of guidance information going in there. I'll include all this. You can see there are more fields there that I could fill in, but I'm not at this time. I'm just skipping through just to get to the end of this. Right, so we've completed the wizard. As you can see, section 5 was the largest part thereof. And we have the option here to go and have a look at the document that's being generated. So here you can see here's my school name and the date as we put in, and here are all the sections that are included within that section. Here you can see Bob Smith, who I entered as the eSafety coordinator, and you can see here all the other names that would have been included if I had actually filled in the content in the boxes provided. So we can scroll down and see our screen here. So we can return to our dashboard at any time by hitting the My Dashboard link from the menu. Now, having gone through the wizard the first time, we see we've got a whole bunch of extra options here in our policy building wizard widget now. You'll see that the create link has now turned into an edit link, and we have a bunch of extra options. These extra options I shall cover in a separate video. What I'm going to look at now, just to finish off, is to show you the edit function. Now, if we hit edit, it will drop us back into the wizard, and this all behaves just as before. We can move through the section, and maybe we want to say, right, let's give him his full name and include that, and move through here. There we go. I think I'll put the headmaster's name in here as well. When I've made that edit, I'll include. Now, as you can see, the screens are very much the same as they were when we created them, but we do have an extra option here now. So I should explain this. When you're in edit mode, the screens are live, so anything that you have done in a previous edit are included. If you click next, it will move on to the next screen without making any changes. If you click include, it will resave this screen. So if you've made some changes and click include, those changes will be reflected within your new edited document. If you choose skip, however, that will decide to remove this section from your policy. So you must remember that if you're going to edit and you simply want to move on to another page and leave it unchanged, use the next button or the include button and not the skip button. When you've completed all your changes, you can head back to your dashboard and view your policy, and if we scroll down we'll see that the school name there has changed, and we should be able to see, yep, there our head teacher's name has now been included. Okay, so that's our quick introduction to the policy building wizard. As I say, the distribution and the other options shown in the menu here will be covered in different videos. Thank you.